Welcome everybody. In this lesson, we're going to walk through a high-level introduction to GitHub. So we'll start off by talking about the different products that are involved. Then we'll take a look at the architecture in terms of the different key elements that you need to configure or that you can use to help you manage your GitHub's account. And finally, we'll wrap things up by having a chat about the different billing options, as well as some tricky things here that you might want to know before you go and pay for any additional features. Okay, so first things first, what is GitHub? Well, if you've already been through the introduction to Azure DevOps, you'll probably think that these are two similar products. When we're working with GitHub, we get access to a range of different public and private capabilities for helping us with the software delivery lifecycle. Now also, just like Azure DevOps, you can actually get support for both the standard, if you like, cloud capabilities through github.com, but if you want to, you can deploy your own GitHub Enterprise server on premises. When you're working with GitHub, you'll find that there's a range of different third-party, open source, paid-for products, integrations, and other marketplace offerings that you can use as well. And some people might even argue that GitHub has more functionality that you can connect into than Azure DevOps. And unless you're going to use the on-premises server, of course, one of the big selling points is that this is a fully managed cloud solution. What sort of features are we talking about though? Well, first and foremost, GitHub repositories. This is really where GitHub started out. It became pretty popular for the open source community to have some sort of online remote Git repository. And in fact, something that GitHub added a while back is that it doesn't really matter what plan you're using, you'll always have access to unlimited private or public repos. You used to actually only get this capability for some of the different plans. Now, if you've got all of your code in some GitHub repos and you want to go and implement CI/CD pipelines, you can use GitHub Actions. This is very similar to the Azure DevOps Pipelines capability, where we're talking about leveraging some compute that is managed for you that you can go and use to execute a range of build, test, and deploy tasks. Now, also similar to Azure DevOps, when you start using GitHub Actions, you'll see that we can even implement these actions as code through YAML configuration. Now, another fairly common thing that we're going to use if we're working with CI/CD is somewhere to store our packages. Well, with GitHub Packages, we have exactly that. We can host our own packages. We can even go and integrate with other third-party upstream package providers. And really, this can just help us to ensure that throughout that delivery pipeline, we are keeping track of and have a kind of version control for the packages as well as the source code. Now, if you are an individual, you can definitely get access to all of these capabilities, but if you're a small, medium, or large enterprise, you might also want to be managing a team of developers or maybe even an open source product, and for that, you'll want to have some sort of work management capabilities. Now, GitHub definitely does provide that. There's a range of features for tracking issues, for managing projects, for even displaying these visually through boards. And one of the key features that you could say started to help GitHub drive to success was the ability to collaborate on various different tasks, whether that is merging code, performing code reviews, or things along that line. So folks, as you'll see here, GitHub really provides a range of different features and tools and products, all to help you with managing that software delivery lifecycle. Whether you just want a simple repo for your own personal private project, or maybe you're managing an entire open source solution, okay, you can definitely rely on GitHub to help you out. Now, if you do want to go ahead and implement GitHub, there are some things we should know. Firstly, when you work with GitHub, you are going to create a GitHub account. Now, even if you're working with an organization, the GitHub recommendation, for the most part, is that people will use their own personal account. But I will just call out here that if you want to, there are some other capabilities around enterprise account management if you're using the GitHub Enterprise plan that I'll talk about a little bit later. But otherwise, if you want to get started, you create your own personal GitHub account, and then you can go ahead and get access straight away to all of the GitHub products that we just spoke about. Now, that might fit your needs, that might be perfectly okay, but if you are working in larger teams or certainly as part of a big organization, well, GitHub does provide some management controls for that. So you can, for example, go and create something called an organization. Now, this is kind of like an identity similar to a GitHub account, but it's not something that you actually, have a username and password for. An organization is a representation of some form of actual business entity, or some form of entity, at least, that is kind of different from a personal entity. So if you do want to create an organization, let's say we wanted to create one for Aussiemark, then what I would have to do is I would have a personal GitHub account. I would go and create this organization. And when I create that organization, I would specify who the owner or owners are for this organization. Now, that organization can then actually go and create the different products that we just spoke about earlier. So I could, for example, have a repository for the AussieMart web application, and I could actually have that repository created by the AussieMart organization itself. If you're going to start using organizations, you're probably going to have more than just the owner that created that organization. You're very likely to have a range of different people that are accessing this, that are performing different tasks, all under the guise of that organization. If that's the case, you're probably also going to want to use teams to help you go and structure and assign different membership, permissions, and help out with collaboration. So GitHub does actually provide that capability. It's a feature within organizations themselves. You can't just create a team without having an organization, but if you do have an organization, you can create teams within them to help manage the different identities that you've got accessing the different resources. Now, like a lot of the different source control systems out there, you will actually find there's support for third-party integrations, marketplace offerings, and other resources that you can connect to. So for example, we could even create some connectivity into Azure DevOps and leverage the Azure Boards capability to help manage different tasks that we are working on for our software solutions. Or if you like, you could even connect to other resources like Azure itself, or maybe third-party solutions such as CircleCI to help out with your CI/CD pipelines. So everybody, that's a high-level walkthrough of the features and the architecture. The one final thing I wanted to cover with you is that of billing. If you're going to use GitHub, you can have free access, and this is perhaps what has driven a lot of the GitHub success, because you can get access to unlimited public and private repos, and you also get access to pretty much all the other products that we've spoken about so far. Now, if you do choose to use the free plan, you will get some additional inclusions around things like CI/CD compute capacity or even storage limits for packages, but there are some features that you will miss out on, and that's largely around the security, collaboration, and advanced features for working with code. If you did want some of those other capabilities, then that's probably where you're going to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to upgrade my plan and I'm going to use the Pro offering that is available. Once again, that includes unlimited public and private repos, but you will get additional capabilities that you might have been missing around security, managing workflows, and so on compared to the free plan. Also, when we compare that to the free plan, you will get additional resources, limits, storage amounts, compute capacity, and so on. Now, there are actually two other plans that are available, and that's Teams, where you will continue to get those unlimited repos, but you'll get greater capabilities in addition to what you get from the Pro plan. But really for Teams, it's focused around organizations, collaborative features, additional access to support from GitHub themselves, and you will also, of course, get additional resourcing around CI/CD, packaging, storage, compute capacity, and other features that I haven't listed here. Now, if you're a really big organization and you're working with GitHub, you might actually want to investigate the enterprise offering. It certainly costs a bit more. You do continue to get those unlimited public and private repos, but really you're going to see access to all of the capabilities on offer. There's greater security if you wanted single sign-on. You have the ability to go and create enterprise users if you want to manage identity for your organization rather than using the private GitHub accounts. And you will get the top amount of limits for storage, CI/CD, and various other resources used by the different GitHub products. Now, just to close out this conversation on billing, I would say that if you look at the pricing page, it seems fairly straightforward, but if you go and dig a bit deeper, sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. So I did just want to call out that these different offerings kind of actually differ depending on whether you are an individual or an organization. So if you're an individual, you can actually sign up for free, pro, or teams offerings. But if you're an organization, you can sign up for free, teams, and enterprise. Now, again, these are the differences around what plans you can use depending on what account you are setting up that plan for. But also understand, an individual that has the free plan will actually have different inclusions than an organization that is configured with a free plan. And similarly, an individual with the Teams plan will have different inclusions than an organization who has the Teams plan. So I've really only walked through a high-level overview of these different features, but hopefully that will help you out to get started with GitHub. Thanks for joining me, folks. That's a wrap.